I think Dr. Satar has cued us quite nicely for the second presentation. I have the pleasure of introducing Louise Buelow-Smith, and she's a clinical advisor for facility support at St. Boniface Hospital in Winnipeg. Louise has 29 years of nursing experience, the last 16 of which have been focusing in support services, working in involving roles with medical device reprocessing, environmental services, supply chain, and capital planning. Along with Louise, Michelle Macrae will be speaking as well. Michelle is the manager of housekeeping, laundry, and medical device reprocessing. That's quite a broad role that she has, also at St. Boniface Hospital. And Michelle has been in the field of environmental services for 28 years. Managing this combination of services, she's found very helpful when addressing difficult aspects of infection prevention affecting all departments supporting patient care. Michelle has participated in several studies which utilize UV markers to assess the presence of contaminants and developed audit tools for the use of these UV markers. I've had the pleasure of working with both Michelle and Louise the last probably 24 months, I'd say. I've seen firsthand how their combined experiences come together to create a very effective environmental hygiene program. And I hope that you will enjoy their talk, Housekeeping Education, A New and Cleaner Day at St. B. Michelle and Louise, the floor is yours.
Good morning. I'm actually a little nervous because I wasn't expecting so many people here so early in the morning. So as Nicole was saying, I've been in the housekeeping field for 28 years. I started off as a housekeeping cleaner and attendant and worked my way up through the ranks. So our topic today is Housekeeping Education, A New and Cleaner Day at St. B, which is our facility, St. Boniface. So how did we get here? Housekeeping was asked to participate in an upcoming study with a new chemical and a new delivery method. So this gave us an incentive to look at our cleaning protocols, and quite to my surprise, when I looked at the bottom of the protocol and realized that they hadn't been updated since 1998, I thought this was an opportune time to do it. So we looked at our cleaning protocol, and it would provide us an opportunity for a retraining of our staff. So how are we going to move forward? So our new method that we were looking at is taking a patient care area and dividing it into zones. We would like to have had a training lab, so this is near and dear to my heart as far as having something available for our staff, so that would give our staff real-life experience by using an empty ward or an empty patient room to teach and have them do return demos. And dedicated training time, so for our staff to have one-on-one training time with the trainer. From this diagram, this is the diagram that Louise and myself put together regarding having the zone aspect for our staff to be following. So as you can see, it's color-coded, and I'll explain the colors to you right away. So the new method, which we call In the Zone, each patient care area has 4 zones. We have the common zone, which was the gray section. And these are items and space that are shared between patients and touched by multiple staff and visitors. So just an example would be the alcohol wash dispensers, the wipes, the sharps containers that are usually as you're walking into a patient room. The patient zone, which was the blue and pink zone that was on the diagram. These are items and equipment dedicated to one patient. So each, if there's 2 patients in the room, each patient would have their own zone, and that's how we distinguished it for our staff. Next one. The bathroom zone was the brown zone. So this is dedicated to a single patient if we have a private room. A lot of facilities have double rooms, so that would mean 2 patients are sharing the bathroom. Our facility actually has 2 patient rooms that share 1 bathroom, so that is unfortunately 4 people that are sharing 1 bathroom. And the floor zone, which is the last zone that our employees would clean, which is the yellow section. So key points that we wanted to bring up with our staff and we wanted to emphasize with them is that the cloths are going to be dedicated to a zone. So we wanted them to understand that when you're cleaning a certain zone, there will be cloths dedicated. We would set up trigger points telling them when to change their cloth to move on to another, to move on to the next zone. That gloves must be changed and hand hygiene performed when cleaning a zone. We were finding that the staff go in with a pair of gloves, they'll just start cleaning and they continue throughout the room, and there's no thought process as to that their gloves could be contaminated and they're transferring pathogens. All items on the housekeeping cart must be kept clean, and this was hard for them to understand as far as your housekeeping cart is considered clean. You're not to touch it with gloved hands because your gloves are dirty, so you've just basically contaminated every item that's on your cart. So we had to really drill this in for our staff, saying that if you're approaching your cart, you take off your gloves, perform hand hygiene before you touch your items on your cart. Once you've completed cleaning your room and you're walking down the hall, going to your next room, that you're not to have gloves on. You should have performed your hand hygiene, push your cart down the hall, because your cart is considered clean. You do not need to protect yourself from your cart. So that took a lot of discussion, and quite frankly still does at times. So the training lab. So we had the luxury and opportunity at the time that we started this endeavor that we had an empty unit. So Louise and I were able to set up 2 patient rooms, to set up the rooms exactly like they would on a unit, and have this available to us so that we can take our staff through their training. So we developed a core set of trainers that would provide a consistent message and of information to our staff. My core group of trainers were myself and Louise, and we incorporated our supervisors that were available at the time. Staff were provided a zone picture and written protocol, so when they came into the room, we had the zone picture available to them. We explained it to them. We had our cleaning protocol that we had just written up, and we went through it, and originally just sat down and read through it. And then the method was demonstrated by the trainers. So one of us would start cleaning the room, and we would be discussing it as we're doing it, and stop at the key points, explaining to them that this is where you would stop and change your cloth before you move on to your next section. And then the staff would perform a return demo with us. We gave, the average training session for us was 1 hour, but for some employees where English was a second language, we did have to spend a little bit more time with them. So we did stay in the room until we felt that they understood what they were doing and they were able to return the demo without any prompting from us. Our facility has an ESL instructor, so we definitely took advantage of her when we were looking at our protocol. She actually came into the training room with us and observed us training an employee and the employee doing the return demo. And then once the training session was over, she actually sat down with me and discussed some of our written protocol that we had and asked and reminded us to ensure we're not using acronyms, we're not using any slang. Believe it or not, housekeeping does have slang. And just as an example, one of the things that we would put on our cleaning protocol is that we want employees to don gloves. Well, they don't understand what don means, so we had to change our protocol and ensure that it was reader-friendly, so we would put things like put on gloves. Another example would be we ask our employees to top up a dispenser. In some cultures, there is no word for top up. So she was instrumental in that sense where she helped us have our protocol where it was reader-friendly for everyone. And since we had a captive audience, we also took advantage of redoing our routine practices with our staff and going over PPE, contact precaution, and how they put on and take off their isolation garb. At this point, Louise is going to take you through a few slides of how we clean a daily cleaning for a patient room.
So the best laid plans of mice and men. We were to have our video ready, but unfortunately our AV technician could not meet the deadline. It will be submitted to the Academy. We expect to have an award. But after that, we will release it for others to have a look at. We're quite proud of it. But in the meantime, I'm just going to see if I can work this pointer. It is coming soon. But now for a few pictures. Now, it's always good to have a plan B. And knowing that we had an ambitious timeline for the video, we actually did a series of hundreds of stills prior to doing the video. So if you're ever doing something like this, I'd recommend it, because when you go through the process of still photography, you start to look at the process through the eye of the lens. And so when you go on to do the video, you've already got an idea of how you're going to approach the process as a whole. And the other thing that's helpful is, one, if you don't have your video, you have something to show at a conference. But also down the line, having a file of, you might say, stock photos, when you want to emphasize something particularly for education or for presentation, you've got them all. And you've got them in a format and a presentation that's correct to your protocol. So you're not pulling something off the internet that may or may not be applicable to your site. So back to our famous zone picture and our multicolors. For the purpose of today, I'm only going to take you through a couple of zones. The first is going to be the common zone, and followed by a patient zone. So for the common zone, as Michelle mentioned, it's the gray areas, literally, because sometimes trying to define what's common and what's dedicated is a little bit difficult. And for the common zone, we do go a little bit into the bathroom. The purpose of that is to do an assessment and some supply replenishment, which I'll take you through next. So for the common zone, we have to say, well, how many cloths are we going to have ready to take into the room? Because the beauty of the zone method is that you can complete a zone and be taken out of that room, which housekeepers frequently are. They never get a chance to actually go start a room and finish it. So you have to have it broken down into bite-sized chunks so that they can go in and do certain activities and may not get back there for hours. So common zone is the one that we do want to attend to, if possible, first thing during the day. So we have our one cloth. We know it's going to be areas touched by patients, visitors, and staff. This time in the common zone is going to also allow us for assessment of the overall cleanliness of the room. So we live in Winnipeg. We have gravel in the winter that is there to prevent people from falling down, and it ends up from the front street up onto the 8th floor. So that results in a lot of extra cleaning, let's say, for the floor zone. And we do assess for the presence of extra furniture. The biggest one on our hit list is the commode. And as I mentioned, we will be going into the bathroom to do a basic assessment and check for supplies. So our staff person here has got a beautifully decked out cart, and you'll notice she's pushing it without gloves on. Yay! Now, let's see here. It's important because we have so many extra precautions in place for patients in hospitals that people stop at the door. So this person is doing just that, and she's looking to see that we have contact precautions in place for this patient. Sometimes the signage could be of a personal nature. It could be that there are things going on, there's some sensitive times going on for the family and for the patient. So we encourage housekeeping to always be aware before you enter the room just what are the limitations. So our famous cart with no gloves. The cart is the equivalent of the Holy Grail in housekeeping. Nothing ever dirty is to touch the cart. The checking for special signage. And of course, all tasks start with hand hygiene. And so we have foam type alcohol hand rub available at our site, both on the carts and in many locations throughout the nursing unit. And believe it or not, there's a right way and a wrong way to take a towel out of a dispenser. Now, if you have those towelettes available at your site, you may have noticed that if you don't pull them out correctly, you end up being the musician who's pulling out the scarves out of their sleeve, and you're wondering, why can't I get one? Well, you can't get one if you pull up. You can get one if you give it a little tug and pull sideways, because the tops of the dispensers are meant to rip when you have a horizontal action. So there's a lot of folks at our place that did not know that. So we spent some time on teaching how to take the claws out. And the other thing is that you want to minimize any splash of chemical in the environment, so it is a good OH&S practice as well. So that's just showing the final ripping action. And we start on the outside of the room. In our site, we have the alcohol hand rub dispensers frequently on the outside, sometimes just at the entrance. And this is actually worthy of 2 photos. And why it's only one alcohol hand dispenser? Well, because that grip or that push lever is not one surface. It's at least 2, and depending on how you grab it, you could almost say it's 3. So it was a great segue for Dr. Sitar to provide us that how you wipe and what you're touching and how you approach it, not just as something that's on a wall, but how are you using it, and letting that define how your cleaning technique needs to be developed. We have chart holders that we have to deal with. We're moving more and more into the computer age, but paper hasn't left us yet. And this is just another example as we move into the room and the common zone, that there are many types of door handles and back plates and things that need to be addressed. And you can see that this person is ensuring in the first photo that they've got all the surfaces where someone may grab. And light switches. Now, the closet handle may or may not, depending on the design of the room, be in the common zone. In our newer wing, it actually is right beside the patient bed. So for those rooms, the staff that work in those rooms will be taught that that is a patient zone item. In our older wards, of which we have many, the closet doors are in the common area. So that's just something that gets worked out on an individual basis, amongst other things. And we also have to wipe the wipe container, because that's a high touch. And we have a reusable biohazardous waste container system that we also implemented in the last year, and so we also ensure that that's getting a wipe on its exterior too. So depending on where your facility is at, but the introduction of computers has brought many issues, not only to how nurses are doing their practice, but how housekeepers are doing their cleaning. So depending on the design of the unit, we may have computers stationed in the room. Sometimes they're portable units, and that presents a little bit more of a challenge as to who actually will be doing the cleaning on a daily basis. Those things move around quite a bit. So the only thing I wanted to point out with this one is that at this point, we are not wiping the monitor with our disinfectant product. They are not touch screens. So that may change at some point in time, but we are cleaning everything else around it. We are just worried about getting into compatibility issues with monitors and things being in the building. But we do have the keyboard to deal with, and I'm sorry to say that that's not our hospital-approved keyboard, but it got purchased anyway, and are not hospital-approved mouse, but this is my purchasing side coming out, because I'm supposed to be able to stop this from happening, but I can't. Anyway, we did use the same protocol regardless of whether it was the correct keyboard or the correct mouse, and it still is a good protocol. So we're happy with that. And then the last thing, that if you do have computer systems that you may not be thinking about, the hard drive is not a high touch, but man, with that static electricity, what a dust trap. So it is something that you want to address on a regular basis. And we have just little charting tables, and you'll notice, although this picture isn't quite perfect, when you're dealing with tables, it's not that you get the top, it's actually that you get underneath. So that was a big education point when we talked about anything that was horizontal. How do you grab it? Not here, here. And the last point with this overall common zone is that she's going to be observing for the cleanliness in the room and being able to anticipate what other supplies. As part of this zone method, you are to be prepared when you go in to do a zone with all the cloths or anything else that you need for it. You're not supposed to be going back and forth to the cart, because that increases the chance for cross-contamination of the cart. So in the bathroom, this is just one example. They're going to be looking at all the supplies, so they'll be looking at paper towel, they'll be looking at soap, and for anything that needs to be replaced, they will clean that dispenser or holder. So the example here is the toilet paper. We've taught staff now that at a half roll or less, they're to discard that remaining roll. That was hard for a lot of folks, but we want them to put in a clean roll of paper, because chances are it is not going to be looked at again for 24 hours, and if you have 4 patients in the room, you can go through a roll of toilet paper in 24 hours and perhaps even more. And I also don't know if you have the same type of toilet roll holders, but I can't get the toilet roll off. So we can't expect our patients to. They always have these little special locking mechanisms. So anyway, our staff are performing that very vital function for patients. Then they will be cleaning whatever the holder is or dispenser. But then they will be removing gloves, doing hand hygiene, and then back to the room with clean hands, clean product, and no gloves. And that was a big change, because once those gloves got on, it was really hard to emphasize when they have to come off. So that ends the common zone. So we'll have a quick look at a patient zone. Oops, okay. Patient zone is a minimum of 2 cloths, 3 cloths if a commode is present or there's some other furniture that needs to be addressed. All items are specific to that patient. And cloths 2 and 3 are placed in strategic spots to be triggers to allow the staff to know, when do I have to change cloths? So the example for cloth 2 is that it's to be on the armrest of the patient chair, and for cloth 3, it is to be on the armrest of the commode. So they come into the room and they drop their 2 other cloths immediately so that they're ready to go when they're at that stage. So we have several slides about the overbed table. The overbed table is done first, and it's done first for several reasons. One, this is the patient's most intimate space. This is where they put everything that's important to them. And that even includes things that we handle as staff quite frequently, water jugs, etc. So they come in to do the patient zone with clean gloves, clean cloth, and the first thing they're going to do is the overbed table. And it's important for patients to not only see us clean, but see that we give certain priority to different areas. And this is a very visible way of showing the patient that they're first. This second slide is just showing once again the importance of getting underneath the edges, the grab locations, and also the levers, and lastly, the base. Now, the next stage in the patient zone is really just quite logical. Once you've got the overbed table done, you're going to pick a point and you're going to start and you work your way all the way around. So in our location, generally starting with the bedside table and then moving over to anything that's above the bed and around the bed, side rail, footboard, etc., and then moving on to any other controls on the other side. So starting with the bedside table, light pole, and perhaps TV and telephone. These are our new bedside tables. If you have bedside tables that have grooved pulls for the drawers, we had those for many years. They're just getting replaced this year. Out of sight, out of mind. Those we did testing on those grooved drawers, and the pulls were not what we would like. So one advantage to just having a visible pull, which now is our standard, is that it is visible, and you know that you have to clean it. And also we have different light cords, light pulls, etc. We now have all wipeable light cord pulls, so we're quite lucky. And then it's a matter of moving methodically around the bed to do the side rails. Now, side rails are really difficult to clean because there are a variety of surfaces. So in this slide here, we're showing the tubular structure of the side rail, which means your cleaning cloth has to go all the way around and you have to have a certain action as you're moving along that particular piece. And then, of course, we have buttons. And buttons have different levels of difficulty in cleaning. So sometimes for certain buttons, we actually have to put an additional piece of protocol in place so that the buttons are cleaned effectively. And then after you've done your side rails, you're moving along to do the footboard, and then you'll just repeat on the other side. And at the other upper end of the bed, in this case, we have the call system. If you have a chance to choose call systems or be involved, you want to ensure that they are wipeable. We've been lucky to get standardized to the patient call button. This one here, which so far has been the easiest one to clean and quite durable. And the cleaning action for that, as you can see, is a 360 motion, so that we're ensuring that all the surfaces are touched. And here ends cloth 1. So that's a fair bit. Now you may say, well, how did you know that you had moisture, you had clean, you had any chemical left? We did time studies. So when we knew when cloth 1 was done, that's it. Now to move on to something that's fresh. And this is the next big change in our protocol, is we now clean curtain edges at St. Boniface Hospital. And we start off with a fresh cloth number 2, so we have the maximum amount of chemical. And because our cleaning protocol was incorporated into a study, we know that we had adequate contact time, and it actually did have some good effect on reducing organisms. It's not perfect because people don't always grab curtains at the edge, but it is a step, and we're just going to take it as that and see where it goes. So the action is actually to open up the cloth and, starting at about shoulder height, grab both sides of the material and shimmy all the way down. Next, for cloth number 2, is the patient bedside chair. And then, in the absence of a windowsill or a visitor chair, that's all cloth 2 has to do. But you have to remember that when you have the cloth of the curtain, that absorbs a lot more of your chemical, so you can't give the same amount of tasks to cloth 2 as you did to cloth 1. And this is our commode cleaning cloth. For daily cleaning, this would be a daily clean. This is not enough cleaning for in-between patient use. This is for something dedicated to a particular patient. And we've selected our commodes for cleanability. And that commode gets its own cloth. And away it goes. So for patient zone completion, you have to remove the garbage bag, clean the garbage can, tie up the garbage, dispose in the cart. And then that same action as you saw earlier on, which was to remove gloves, perform hand hygiene, and then replace the garbage bag. Once again, no gloves, clean hands. And the only other thing I'd like to mention in our protocol that's a little bit different is when we do the floor zone, we actually pull 2 smaller equipment wipes that use the same chemistry as there were in our larger wipes that we used for the cleaning proper. And those are left on the cart so that the staff person can clean each mop handle before the mop is returned to the cart. So that that was a very different step that had not been ever incorporated in our previous protocols. So on to Michelle.
So our contributors to success. What we found is that having a training lab was key. Just to give our staff a realistic patient room to work in was very important. It gave the staff a safe environment to be trained in, to ask questions. If they did something wrong, it's okay. There was only us in the room. There wasn't a patient or a family or someone else watching them. So having this room was key into the comfort of the employees and for them to take the time and learn what they have to do. Coaching method must be consistent, so that was important for our trainers, is to ensure that the same message is getting out to each employee each and every time, that there's no deviation in the protocol, that they're following the same protocol. Immediate and ongoing feedback to reinforce our new way. Our facility is lucky enough to actually have incorporated the UV lotion inspection process. We incorporated this in 2007, so we do perform inspections on our staff using UV lotion. Our supervisors go up on the units and will choose a room. They'll inoculate 15 to 20 spots in the room between the bathroom and the patient zone. Sometime throughout the course of the day, they'll check the room to see if it's been done. Most times by the end of the day, they're able to assess the room, ensure that it's been done. If there are any spots left over in the room, if it wasn't cleaned completely, the supervisor will go and get the employee, bring them into the room, have the black light with them so they can actually show them the spots that they've missed. So they may have cleaned the sink and everything else, but they missed the soap dispenser, which I have to say is the most common item that our staff tend to miss. So it gives our supervisors actual real-time coaching that they can have with the staff. They can ask them to they ask the staff to show them how they clean the dispenser, and so it gives us an opportunity to see, are they holding the cloth properly? Are they using proper motion? Are they hitting the top of the dispenser all the way to the bottom or just doing the front? So having that feedback, immediate feedback for the staff was very important. We also just recently actually developed our own audit program on an iPad. So our supervisors take the iPad up to the unit, they mark their room, they input the information on the iPad. We'll come back later, and the information is automatically downloaded into our database. So that also gives them the opportunity that if a staff member wants to see what their results have been for the last 6 months, they can actually pull it up on the computer and sit down with the employee and do the discussion right then and there. So that also breaks down each and every item that they inspect. So it'll tell an employee that if the soap dispenser, they're sitting at 90%, a paper towel dispenser, they're sitting at 80%. So it gives them also another opportunity for real-time coaching. Our challenges for tomorrow. So what we would like to see is having yearly competency training and return demos for our staff. I have to say that training I'm very passionate about having the training for our staff, and I'll just tell you a little story about when I started. So I started 28 years ago in housekeeping, so this was 1986. So at the time, I came in off the street. I would work with a buddy for 2 days if we were lucky. Usually it was 1. And they'd send me off my way onto a unit to do some cleaning. So one of the very first days that I was by myself, I was on a unit that had an HIV discharge. So I had to go into this room to clean this HIV room. And I must say that I went in the room, I started doing what I was supposed to be doing, and then some of the nursing staff came in behind me, and they started throwing everything out. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, why did they have me in this room? And so not having the education to explain to me what an isolation room is and what it's all about was scary. It was scary for the housekeeper. And so one of the things that we try to do is, and what we are going to be doing, is that we ensure that our staff understand what is VRE, what is MRSA, how is it transmitted, how do you protect yourself, and most importantly is what are we doing to ensure that we're protecting the patient. So that's all part of our education that we have with our staff, and we're finding that over the last few years that it's been instrumental with the confidence of our staff when they're in a room cleaning, and actually a lot of the nursing staff tends to come to housekeeping to ask them questions about what they should be doing, if they should be cleaning something or throwing something out. So it's a really great feeling for our housekeeping staff to have that knowledge. So the creation of a permanent training lab, that would be the best thing ever for us, is to have an actual room where we can bring somebody all year round. If we want to look at the year-round training, I mean, that we have like over 300 staff members, so that would mean to have something available to us all the time, we can continuously be doing this. Any brand new employees coming in, we can also put them through this training method. And then just empowering our staff that their role as environmental infection preventionists is very important. So that's been key and instrumental in all this. So thank you.
Thanks, Louise and Michelle. A great job. I know it was fun for me being able to see how the process went in place to begin with. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah, just if you would mind going to the microphone, please. His questions are hard.
Wonderful presentation, and I congratulate your team for having thought through this so carefully. But my question is, obviously doing a job properly to this degree of detail takes longer. So how do you fight this battle with human resources and your group to be able to create that balance? And the other question as a part of my next thought is that this training requires time, but at the same time, housekeeping staff are notorious for rapid turnover. Isn't there a kind of a continuing battle then?
Yeah, okay. So regarding the length of time that they're in a room, we actually did a time study on how long it should take us to clean a room. And this new protocol did not add more time onto what they were doing, because in theory, these are all things they should have been doing already. So the only thing that we added was the curtain. But the interesting part about the training that I learned was that we do have probably 60% or 65% of our staff have been there 25 years and over. So that was the challenging part of our training, because they couldn't understand why I'm being trained. I've been doing this job for 25 years. But once we had them in the room and we started showing them what we wanted and what the expectation was, I heard a lot of, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I'm supposed to do that? So it was educational in that sense. And we haven't added, like I say, we haven't added time to what they have to do, because by knowing exactly what you got to do and the sequence you got to do it in, it's actually time saving in the long run, as far as having a sequence that you can follow, and they're not bouncing back and forth and doing different things.
So, to the second part of the question about resources and time for ongoing competency training, that is actually a key reason for the development of the video, because we do need to get things, how can I say, in terms of the training, we had a bit of a luxury this time. We don't expect that luxury to be extended in the future. So that is a huge challenge, is to get the best resources in place to give the maximum impact with the least amount of time. And I'm going to stress again the importance of having a real-time lab. When you have to get down and clean a toilet, you have to be able to do it in a bathroom that is as tight and difficult to move in as ours, so that you can really appreciate how much work goes into all this cleaning.
I agree. Very good presentation. It was really great. Now, you used pre-moistened towels. Do you know if a facility was to not use that method, would there be varieties, or what you would have to do to revise the protocols that you have developed?
Part of this exercise in terms of changing our chemistry was that we were moving from a agent that had cleaning claims only to an agent that had disinfecting claims. And that's, we looked at using different cloths, what we had in existence, and bottom line is that it was far too expensive because the amount of chemical or chemistry absorbed and the amount of chemistry released, just the numbers didn't work. But we did do work to determine that we had good absorption, and believe you me, you have to be very specific about the cloth. And then we also ensured that we had good release. So yeah, we did do that as preliminary, but found we couldn't proceed with it.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. You mentioned that you selected commodes based on cleanability. Can you explain a little bit about the criteria you used in that evaluation?
Yes, the commode that's in the pictures is actually our first generation. The one that we've gone with now is a stainless steel frame. It's actually the same frame, but it is stainless steel. The surfaces, although they're not perfect, they do have a bit of an absorptive quality. But we do know that the seat, for example, everything on that frame can be taken off, and the seat itself, if necessary, can go through the MDR cart washer. So it's got a pretty high tolerance to heat. Also, the surfaces are very smooth. So we selected a commode that has a pot that can slide in. So we don't have any complicated mechanism to hold the bedpan or commode in place. We don't use bedpan holders anymore. And if you've ever seen those, they're just awful. They've got the two little springies, and you pull those down, and then hopefully nothing ever splashes back up at you. But also the springs themselves are just impossible. But anyways, those were some of the criteria we used, as well as weight capacity and stability. And I should say also on an ergonomic OT side, the height, the seat height.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you very much. You spoke briefly about touchscreen monitors, that there's not a lot of data assembled. I work in a dialysis unit where our machines are touchscreen. I was just wondering what you would suggest to disinfect the screens, because right now we're using just alcohol pads.
That's a difficult one. What we're experiencing is that touchscreen technology is moving faster than anybody can keep up with it. And we've reviewed all of our touchscreens, and we have instructions that say absolutely no alcohol, or alcohol only, or my favorite, mild soap and water.
Yeah.
I want to find the mild soap and water. But anyway, there are some chemistries coming out that do have better compatibility with the touchscreens. I have to say right now we are defaulting ourselves to 70% isopropyl alcohol. That's not where we want to be, but it is a step. Because, as I say, we're just finding so many different things coming into the building with touchscreens, and this is never with equipment that's worth $1 or $2. Mm-hmm. It's always like thousands of dollars, so you just don't want to go crazy without having some evidence behind you.
Okay, wonderful, thank you.
My question is great presentation. I just love it. It was really good. The question I would have is with the cleaning piece of the disinfecting. If there was gross contamination in the room, like with the little cloths, how do you deal with that, and what type of pre-cleaning do you do before the disinfection?
What a good question. Okay, so when we did the common zone assessment for overall cleanliness, if you saw anything that was grossly contaminated, that results in a pre-clean. So that's a cloth. And then you go back and you do your disinfecting.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks again, Louise and Michelle. Excellent, excellent presentation. Thank you for all the questions. We are on to break. We are on my iPhone time. So if you guys want to make certain that you're going to be on time to me, it is now 10:05, and we will be starting at exactly 10:30, and doors will be shut and locked if you're not back by 10:30.